You have never once experienced your own death. Not really. Every night you fall asleep, and every morning, something wakes up believing itself to be you, and you never question the gap in between. But there is one experience waiting for every person reading these words that cannot be rehearsed, cannot be searched, cannot be borrowed from someone else's account, because no one who has crossed that final boundary has ever come back to describe what lies beyond it. Or have they? Somewhere right now, in a hospital, a heart is stopping, and in the seconds after it does, something is happening inside that skull that doctors did not expect, did not design for, and still cannot fully explain. This isn't a story about ghosts. It's a story about biology, about the exact moment you stop being you, and why that moment is not nearly as simple or as sudden as anyone assumed. Here is the question that matters more than any other in this video. When precisely do you die? Not the day, not the hour, the second. Doctors have an answer written on certificates every day, and it is, in a very real sense, a guess. The first few seconds after the heart stops look, from the outside, like an ending. Blood stops moving. Oxygen stops arriving. By every clinical measure, this is where the story should end. But inside the brain, something else is starting. In 2013, a team at the University of Michigan wired electrodes into 9 rats and stopped their hearts. In the 30 seconds that followed, brain activity didn't fade out. It spiked, a burst of gamma waves, more synchronized than anything seen while the animals were awake. But the strangest part wasn't that the brain was still active. It was what came next, because a decade later, the same researchers found something almost identical in dying human patients. In a small study of 4 people whose life support was withdrawn, 2 showed that same surge of gamma activity as their brains shut down, activity closely linked, in decades of prior research, to conscious thought. This creates a problem scientists still haven't solved. The brain doesn't switch off region by region on cue. Different areas shut down in sequence, and the ones tied to memory, emotion, and inner narrative can keep firing even after the outside world has gone dark. Some researchers believe this may be why resuscitated patients across cultures with no contact with one another so often describe the same handful of things, leaving the body a tunnel, a light, a life replaying in vivid detail, an overwhelming calm. And here is the twist almost no one expects. For years, physicians assumed anyone reporting memories from this window must have imagined them before or after, never during. Because during, the brain was supposed to be incapable of forming memory at all. The AWARE-2 study, led by cardiac arrest researcher Sam Parnia at NYU Langone, found something that complicated that assumption. Some survivors reported memories and perceptions tied to their cardiac arrest, describing awareness during a period when their brains, by every conventional model, should not have been forming any. Whether those experiences happened during the arrest itself, during CPR, or somewhere in the blur of recovery, remains one of the central unanswered questions in the field. That doesn't prove the mind survives the body. Skeptics have a simpler explanation ready. A brain starved of oxygen is known to produce tunnel vision and vivid hallucination, even in a lab, no soul required. Both things can be true at once, the experience entirely real to the person having it, and entirely explainable by biology. But either way, the wall between conscious and gone just got a lot less solid than the one drawn on hospital paperwork. So, if the brain is still working minutes after the heart stops, how long can a body remain alive after the person is already, legally, dead? This is where the timeline gets almost absurd. Individual cells don't die the instant the heart does. Organs can remain biologically active for hours. It's the entire reason transplants work at all. A heart, a kidney, a liver can be removed from someone legally and medically declared dead, and go on beating, filtering, functioning inside someone else. Depending on which part of you we're talking about, you can be dead and biologically alive at the same time. Death isn't one door closing. It's dozens of doors, in different rooms of the same house, closing at different speeds. Long before anyone had an EEG, humans only had one way to make sense of this window. Stories. Nearly every culture, independently, arrived at some version of a soul leaving the body, a journey, a light, a judgment. Science doesn't prove any of that happened, but it may help explain why the experience of leaving the body shows up, again and again, across human history, vivid enough that entire belief systems were built to explain it. Which brings us back to the real question, the one that hasn't gone away. When exactly are you gone? Because the 4 to 6 minute window doctors have relied on for decades. The point past which a brain is assumed unrecoverable is no longer treated as fixed. Newer, resuscitation techniques are forcing doctors to question how fixed that limit really is, and a meaningful number of people declared dead today could, as those techniques improve, be brought back tomorrow. There is still no answer to the deepest version of this question, whether consciousness is something the brain manufactures or something the brain merely channels. Researchers on every side of that debate agree on one thing: current science cannot settle it. What has changed is everything around it. The line you've spent your whole life picturing as an instant, a switch, a single last breath, is in every documented case we now have instruments for, a slow unfolding, active, gradual, still running for longer than anyone once thought possible. You will never get to compare notes with your future self about what happens in that window. But for the first time, science is standing in that doorway, with the monitors switched on. And what it's finding is this: you don't die in a single instant. Your body crosses a series of boundaries, one at a time. The real mystery was never just what happens after death. It's how long you are still there, quietly, before death is finally complete.